Hello, and welcome to this edition of Dad Reads Books. We are reading from all the Mowgli stories, and we are at the beginning of the chapter in the Rook. It's on page 250, and it's the last chapter of the book, In the Rook. This is talking about the jungles in the northwest of India during the colonial period when the British were ruling India and lording it over, and everything was at their service. And this uh, Rudyard Kipling's father was in the British service, and so he was in the British service also, the government service, and he had a bungalow and uh, at the edge of the forest, and so he could observe the entire situation, the nature, how everything developed, and he wrote all these delightful stories. In the Rook, of the wheels of public service that turned under the Indian government, there is none more important than the Department of Woods and Forests. The rejoicement of all India is in its hands, or will be when the government has the money to spend. Its servants wrestle with wandering sand torrents and shifting dunes, wattling them at the sides, damming them in the front, and pegging them down atop with coarse grass and spindling pine after the rules of Nancy. They are responsible for all the timber in the state forests of the Himalayas, as well as for the denuded hillsides that the monsoons wash into dry gullies and aching ravines. Each cut each cut a mouth crying aloud that carelessness can do. Carelessness causes the hillsides to be denuded. They experiment with battalions of foreign trees and coax the blue gum to take root and perhaps dry up the canal fever. In the plains, the chief part of their duty is to see that the belt fire lines in the forest reserves are kept clean, so that when drought comes and the cattle starve, they may throw the reserve open to the villagers' herds and allow the man himself to gather sticks. They pull and lop for the stacked railway fuel along the lines that burn no coal. They calculate the profit of their plantations to 5 points of decimals. They are the doctors and the midwives of the huge teak forests of Upper Burma, the rubber of the eastern jungles, and the gallnuts of the south. And they are always hampered by lack of funds. But since a forest officer's business takes him far from the beaten roads and the regular stations, he learns to grow wise in more than woodlore alone, woodlore alone, to know the people and the polity of the jungle, meeting tiger, bear, leopard, wild dog, and all the deer, not once or twice, after days of beating, but again and again in the execution of his duty. The people who go into the forest for jungle for hunting, they have to beat the drum to scare the animals out so that then they can shoot them. But the forest officer has to go into the forest and he meets all these animals on a day to day basis: tiger, bear, leopard, wild dog, and all the deer, again and again during the execution of his duty. He spends much time in saddle or under canvas. In saddle means he's on his horseback and going into the forest, into the jungle, or under canvas. He is camping there overnight to keep watch on something. The friend of under the canvas, the friend of newly planted trees. Yeah, that's it. Newly planted trees to be guarded from forest life, which will come and dig into it and upset all the plantation. The associate of uncouth rangers and trackers till the woods that show his care in turn set their mark upon him, and he ceases to sing the naughty French songs he learned at Nancy and grows silent with the silent things of the underbrush. So he grows with them and they grow with him and they become intertwined into one personality. So he ceases to sing the naughty songs, French songs he learned at Nancy Play School, and he grows silent with the silent things of the underbrush. Gisborne has the name of the forest officer we are talking about. Gisborne of the woods and forests had spent 4 years in the service. At first he loved it without comprehensions, because it led him into the open on horseback and gave him authority, so he loved it. Then he hated it furiously and would have given a year's pay for 1 month of such society as India affords. He would have given a year's pay, give me 1 month away, and I'll go back into the city. That crisis over, the forest took him back again, and he was content to serve them, to deepen and widen his fire lines, to watch the green mist of his new plantation against the older foliage, to dredge out the choked stream, and to follow and strengthen the last struggle of the forest, where it broke down and died among the long pig grass. So that's what the forest officer does. Hmm. He, the forest took him back and he was content to serve them. His work is to deepen and widen his fire lines. So that will be the line where nothing grows, so that there is a clear way for the fire to stop. And to watch the green mist of his new plantation against the older foliage, to dredge out the choked stream, and to follow and strengthen the last struggle of the forest where it broke down and died among the long pig grass. On some still day, that grass would be burned off, and 100 beasts that held their homes there would rush out before the pale flames at high noon. Later, the forest would creep forward over the blackened ground in orderly lines of saplings, and Gisborne, watching, would be well pleased. His bungalow, a thatched, white walled cottage of 2 rooms, was set at one end of the great rook. The rook is a clearing, that I understand now. At one end of the rook was his cottage of 2 rooms, a thatched, white walled cottage, and overlooks the rook. He made no pretense at keeping a garden, for the rook was coming right up to his door and curled over in a thicket of bamboo. And he rode from his veranda into the hearth without the need of any carriage or drive. So it was his cottage and the forest, hardly any gap between the two. Abdul Ghaffur, his fat Mohammedan butler, fed him when he was at home and spent the rest of the time gossiping with the little band of native servants whose huts lay behind the bungalow. There were 2 grooms, a cook, a water carrier, and a sweeper, and that was all. Look at the expression. This was an ordinary forest officer, a low level government servant, and he had a bungalow in the forest rook at the edge of the clearing, and his butler, then his 2 grooms to take care of his animals and the horse and all that, a cook, a water carrier, and a sweeper. So one officer, white man, had these five, six, 7 servants, and that was all. That's his expression here. Gisborne cleaned his own guns. So that means he did not have a person to clean his guns, and he kept no dog. So these two are pointing out to the limitations that he did not get this because he was a low level officer. Dogs scared the game, and it pleased the man to be able to say where the subjects of his kingdom would drink at moonrise, eat before dawn, and lie up in the day's heat. The rangers and forest guards lived in little huts far away in the rook, only appearing when one of them had been injured by a falling tree or a wild beast. There, Gisborne was alone. In spring, the rook put out new leaves, but lay dry and still untouched by the fingers of the year, waiting for rain. Only there was then more calling and roaring in the dark on a quiet night. The tumult of a battle royal among the tigers, the bellowing of arrogant buck, or the steady wood chopping of an old boar sharpening his tushes against a bowl. Then Gisborne laid aside his little used gun altogether, for it was to him a sin to kill. In summer, though, the furious May heats, the rook reeled in the haze, and Gisborne watched for the first sign of curling smoke that would betray a forest fire. Then came the rains with a roar, and the rook was blotted out in fetch after fetch of warm mist, and the broad leaves drummed the night through under the big drops, and there was a noise of running water and of juicy green stuff crackling where the wind struck it, and the lightning wove patterns behind the dense matting of the foliage, till the sun broke loose again, and the rook stood with hot flanks smoking to the newly washed sky. This is the quality of English of Kipling. It is so very elegant and highfalutin. Hold on. Yes. And you at school, you learn all these new words and the usage of such words. I'll read that sentence again. It is a very nice sentence. Then came the rains with a roar. No, even the early one. Then Gisborne uh, laid aside his little used gun altogether, for it was to him a sin to kill. In summer, through the furious May heats, the rook reached in a haze, and Gisborne watched for the first sign of curling smoke that should betray a forest fire. Then came the rains with a roar, and the rook was blotted out in fetch after fetch of warm mist, and the broad leaves drummed the night through under the big drops, and there was a noise of running water and of juicy green stuff crackling where the wind struck it, and the lightning wove patterns behind the dense matting of the foliage, till the sun broke loose again, and the rook stood with hot flanks smoking to the newly washed sky. Then the heat and the dry cold subdued everything to tiger color again. So Giswan learned to know the rook and was very happy. His pay came month by month, but he had very little need for money. The currency notes accumulated in the drawer where he kept his home letters and the recapping machine. If he drew anything, it was to make a purchase from the Calcutta Botanical Gardens or to pay a ranger's widow a sum that the government of India would never have sanctioned for her man's death. So, being a kind man, sometimes he would take his own money and pay that widow. Payment was good, but vengeance was also necessary, and he took that when he could. One night of many nights, a runner, breathless and gasping, came to him with the news that a forest guard lay dead by the Kanye stream, the side of his head smashed in as though it had been an eggshell. Gisborne went out at dawn to look for the murderer. It is only travelers and now and then young soldiers who are known to the world as great hunters. The forest officers take their shikar hunting as part of the day's work, and no one hears of it. Gisborne went on foot to the place of the kill. The widow was wailing over the corpse as it lay on a bedstead, while two or three men were looking at the footprints on the moist ground. That is the red one, said the man. I knew he would turn to man in no time, but surely there is game enough even for him. This must have been done for devilry. So they are talking about who would have killed. It would have been that particular tiger. And the tigers don't kill men unless there is no food for them. So the man said, that is the red one. That's the idea of that tiger. I knew he would turn to man in time. That in time the tiger would turn to man because man is easy prey. Hmm? But surely there is game enough even for him. So when there is enough hunting, game, other beasts in the forest, the tiger doesn't need to kill man. This must have been done for devilry. This is mischief. The red one lies up in the rocks at the back of the sal trees, said Gisborne. He lies up in the rocks at the back of the sal trees. The back of the sal trees, above that there are the rocks, and the red one lives there. He knew the tiger under suspicion. Not now, Sahib, not now. He'll be raging and ranging to and fro. Remember that the first kill is a triple kill always. Our blood makes them mad. He may be behind us even as we speak. Oh, he may have gone to the next hut, said another. It is only 4 kos. Wala, who is this? Kos is a measure of distance. It's about a mile or something. Wala, who is this? Gisborne turned with the others. A man was walking down the dried bed of the stream, naked except for his loin cloth, but crowned with a wreath of tasseled blossoms of the white convolvulus, convolvulus creeper. So noiselessly did he move over the little pebbles that even Gisborne, used to the soft footedness of trackers, started. The tiger that killed, he began without any salute, has gone to drink, and now he is asleep under a rock beyond that hill. His voice is clear and bell like, utterly different from the usual whine of the native, and his face, as he lifted it, sorry, and his face, at, as he lifted it in this sunshine, might have been that of an angel strayed among the woods. Sorry for all that. It's a little disturbance here in the breeze, something tickling my nose. His voice, no, sorry.